Hello and welcome to another episode of Bare Bones Wargaming, a show with no bells, no whistles, no frills, just a man, a camera, and his game. This episode, going to, what I mentioned before, talk a little bit about Operation Barbarossa with the 80th anniversary coming up here in, well, 2 weeks from today, actually. Today is the 8th. I'm looking at, as you can see in front of me here, Russia Besieged Deluxe again, which currently is my favorite strategic Eastern Front game. I have decided to pick up again, to reacquire, to give this an honest college try shot. Thunder in the East, Frank Chadwick's game that came out a few years ago that I did have. Looked at it some. I've decided I'm going to go ahead and give it one more really good shot here in the next couple of weeks and see what I think of it to make a final decision. Sometimes I feel like I'm destined to play every single East Front game that exists. We'll see. Anyway, so what's in front of you here, just to share, is again, this is Russia Besieged, the deluxe version from Compass Games. Came out a few years ago. And what I have here in front of you is, I like to call it what Stalin thought was going to happen. Stalin, of course, put a large portion of his forces down here in the area of Kiev and Dnipropetrovsk. I think I got it closer that time. Because that's where he thought the Germans were going to come, south of the Pripyat marshes, which really, marshes, from what I've learned over the last, I don't know, 5-10 years, something like that, actually it seems to be a bit of a misnomer. It seems to be more like a primeval forest, which is a little different animal. Oh, the ground is still soft and all that kind of things, and it's definitely tricky, but not exactly like Louisiana Bayou or something like that. Let's put it that way, for lack of a better way to compare. Anyway, so what I decided to do was I set up the Soviet historical order of battle, which you can do. This comes in the player's guide to Russia Besieged, which also comes with extra counters and stuff. And I've done that here. You can see there's a color coding down here that tells you where new units are going and why. But you can also do one with some extra added units to it as well too, if you wanted to. And not only different locations perhaps, but also some extra historical units for the start of the campaign. So anyway, I decided to do that, and I decided to put my emphasis with what Stalin was coming down in the south. So if you take a look down here in Army Group South territory, you can see what I've done. I have put every single Panzer Corps except two. I took the 46th Panzer and gave it to Army Group Center, and the 57th Panzer is still with Army Group North. And you can see I've got the Luftwaffe, the bulk of them. There's 8 Luftwaffe air fleets, well, not air fleets, but units in here, and I have 6 of them here. There's only 2 a little bit off screen up here to the north, based in Königsberg. So I'm going to try and blast my way through this, especially this, and this. And of course the problem is geography. As you can see here, you've got the upper stretch of the well, it's not the Dnieper. I'm not sure which river this is that flows through the marshes. I'd actually have to check that. Actually, I think it's the Pripyat River. So, because the Dnieper goes up this way, towards Smolensk. Anyway, so as you can see, geography-wise, between the mountains and the marsh, really kind of funnels things here. If you remember, I did a video some time ago where I did what I called the Dracula variant, where I came down here into Romania and went ahead and put the heavy emphasis on the panzers there. And of course I like to mess around with this kind of stuff because I'm not, as you all know by now, I'm not one of those deterministic people. I don't believe that things had to go a certain way. Not necessarily. I read a book a few years back, The Pacific War and Contingent Victory, basically saying how Japan's defeat was not inevitable. One could argue, obviously, logically, that it wasn't the best move. It was a big gamble, but it doesn't mean that it was inevitable defeat. That Japan was going to lose no matter what. I mean, there's so many intangible factors in war. And one of the things, reading Craig Shirley's book, that was the last book I read before I shifted over to Barbarossa, this book here, which basically follows the first month of World War II, well, and of course, a week before, in the United States, showing all kinds of aspects, society-wise and political and stuff. It is interesting to look at it that way, and look at newspaper accounts to see how people really perceive things. It was not something that was a foregone conclusion. It wasn't something that, everybody was sure, yeah, okay, we're going to win this thing, kind of thing. It's easy to say that in hindsight. It's always easy to say, it's kind of like my old man used to say, sometimes when we do something stupid, and afterwards he'd be like, well, everybody's okay, everybody's safe, everybody's fine, so we can laugh about it now. Yeah, in hindsight, but at the time, it may not be the best idea in the world. The lawnmower in the ditch comes to mind, but that's another story for another time. Anyway, so I'm messing around with some ideas here, and one of the books I'm reading and going through very quickly, because it's not very long, is this book here, Hitler's Great Gamble. As you can see, the subtitle there, talking about Barbarossa, and looking at it differently. Was defeat inevitable as soon as the Germans crossed the frontier? I've never believed that, personally. There were so many other things to take into account. And one of the big things, again, I've learned over the last 5 years, especially reading from Stahle's book and Luther's book and such, Luther's books, I guess, both of them have multiple volumes published, is it amazes me just how many British and American tanks and other equipment from the United States that the Germans ran into on the Eastern Front. You take that away, just say that didn't exist. That's just one factor. That makes a difference. It has a big impact on things. So, of course, the biggest thing, and I think the author kind of discounts this a little bit. His book's been interesting. I'm kind of reserving total critique until the end. But the one thing I have noticed so far is he compares the Barbarossa campaign to the German campaign in Russia during 1914-17, and talking about how far the German army got and all that kind of stuff. And that's all fine, but he continuously seems to, I hate to use the word avoid, but he fails to address the whole issue of the internal discord in Russia in the First World War that the Germans were able to take advantage of. And then, of course, the Germans were unable to take care of, because there was a huge amount of internal discord in the Soviet Union as well at the outbreak of Barbarossa. But, of course, because of Nazi ideology and the racial policies, they were unable to take advantage of it. So that, to me, is a huge factor. And if you look at Russian history, anytime anybody has been able to conquer Russia in the past, it's all been because of internal political problems. The Mongols did it because Russia was just too weak. It wasn't organized. But the Poles got all the way into, I'm pretty sure, Moscow, if I remember correctly from my history, because, again, it was, right around the time of troubles and all that stuff. And that actually was part of the time of troubles. So there was all kinds of internal problems after, Ivan the Terrible passed. So that's huge, especially for a country as big as Russia. To get that fragmentation is critical. Anyway, my point being that I don't think anything's inevitable. I've never been a deterministic individual. And I also don't believe material is the most important element in any kind of struggle, no matter what the struggle is. I mean, is material critical? Yes. But it's kind of like, when Penn State beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl in 1982 for the national championship. And Penn State set their defense up so the Georgia linemen weren't sure about the timing of their blocks, and they kept moving things around, and people were talking about how big Georgia's offensive line was and stuff, and Paterno was basically like, look, weight's not a factor if it's not leaning on you, and if you don't know exactly where to go with your blocks because we're showing 2-man fronts, 5-man fronts, mixing things up all the time, who cares? That takes that element out. So I guess that's kind of where I'm going with all this and such. So anyway, so I've got this here, and again, right now I'm experimenting with this Southern Barbarossa. I kind of have made north and center kind of thin. We'll see if I can keep that up. But of course, I'm hoping that by running through here, because in the Barbarossa scenario for this, you need 18 major and minor cities in order to win. So I'm hoping by just running down through here, maybe running the table. Because again, this is something that Stalin thought was going to happen. Stalin thought that the Germans were going to strike through here and drive south and head straight for the oil fields, right out of the gate. That's why he put the bulk of his forces down there with the Kiev military district. So anyway, so that's where we're kind of at right now with Barbarossa. Again, just kind of looking at options here. Thunder in the East is supposed to be here Thursday, I believe. So I'll start to take a look at the rule book and start to play around with that and such as well. I've also started playing around with an idea that I had a while ago, and after reading War Without Garlands, which, by the way, if you are interested in the Eastern Front, and if you've never read War Without Garlands, you got to do that. You simply have to. That is one of the best Eastern Front books I have ever read. It's a little repetitive at times, because I think Kershaw overuses some of his primary sources a bit too much for the soldier's perspective to emphasize his point, which he gets it across beautifully. But a few times he's smacking that horse when that's it's already done. He's kind of closing the barn door after the cows have gone. But it's a great book. But one of the things I noticed about that, and also Barbarossa Unleashed, and also Stale's book, is just the whole maintenance of the pockets and how difficult that was. So I've been kind of toying around with a solitaire game that would allow the player to play the German army as it invades Russia, but the emphasis on the game would be on creating and maintaining those pockets, while at the same time trying to maintain your forward momentum as the panzers, while waiting for the infantry to catch up. Because that really was a big issue. It was a huge issue. So I'm kind of toying around. That's kind of in its infancy stage as I'm kicking around some ideas. I'll let you know more about that if I actually get it somewhere where I think it might actually be feasible. But that's something I've been working on the back burner too, as well. So anyway, so I just thought I'd share with y'all what I'm looking at here with Barbarossa. Because of course, again, the Eastern Front, along with the first couple of years of the Pacific Theater, have always been two of my favorite topics of all. And of course, next year will be 80th anniversary of Case Blue. And I did actually, along with Thunder in the East, I picked up Stalingrad 42. That's what it is. Because I had picked up Holland 44 and I was impressed with the gameplay. I liked it. It worked well. So I decided to pick up Stalingrad 42 and give that a go. After reading different reviews and again, seeing one of the, I guess you could call it sister games, because the system, I understand, is pretty much the same, decided to go ahead and have that to experiment and play around with too. So anyway, so we'll see how this works. I really have got everything loaded up here between, Warsaw and Krakow. I've got the bulk of the German army, especially the panzers down there. So we'll see. Maybe the panzers will take too many losses. Who knows? Yeah. We'll see. So, that's where I'm at. Next episode, I'm not sure what I'll be talking about next episode. If I get this game played quickly enough and I decide to try a different idea, which one of the things this author is talking about the idea of taking Leningrad quickly, using it to help with logistics, although of course, as he also notes, it would be difficult to do because even if you capture Leningrad pretty quick, you're going to run into the winter and it freezes and everything and stuff. But would that made a bigger difference? I don't know, because you still got to get it over that rail network, which was a different gauge and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we'll see. Anyway, so just a little update of what's going on here, bare bones. Wargaming headquarters, as I continue to kind of roll on and enjoy my time studying once again the Eastern Front. I've got a couple other Barbarossa books, one that just literally came out the 1st of June that I've got on my shelf too to take a look at also. But I'm kind of interested to see other people's thoughts, even if they're a little odd or strange, perceived as strange anyway, perhaps by a number of individuals. But I've got John Mosier's, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly or not, Death Ride also, which he also wrote, book about the myth of the Great War, and also one specifically about Verdun. And of course, people have different opinions about his thoughts and analysis and all that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of curious to see what he thinks, because, it's kind of like when I was studying philosophy. Even though I did not agree with most of Nietzsche's ideas, I still read his stuff and analyzed it and thought about it, because it is interesting to see different perspectives, and also it can help you either modify your own thoughts or strengthen your own thoughts if you can find a counter argument to whatever is being discussed. So yeah, okay, so anyway, so that's where I'm at. Again, I can't stress enough, if you're interested in the Eastern Front, you've never read War Without Garlands, definitely pick it up. It's definitely worth it. I think there's a new version, by the way. Try to pick up the new version if you can, because the old version is just... well, let me show you real quick. Hold on, I think I have it down here somewhere. Maybe it's upstairs. Nope, it's down here. The biggest problem I had with the book, and the reason it took me so long to finish it, was, by the way, the diagrams were great. But look at this. Look at the columns. Look at the font. I mean, I gotta be blunt about this. Who the fuck thought that was a good idea? That format and that font. Really? Really? Whew. It was exhausting reading that. I mean, it made my eyes tired every night. And that usually doesn't happen. Sometimes it happens. But it doesn't usually happen. But man, whew, brutal. I've seen a different cover, and I've seen it looking differently, so I'm wondering if it's formatted differently. It seems like the pages are longer. So again, you might want to check out, not that cover, but there's another one that you might want to take a look at and see about the format, if it's more, so to speak, user-friendly. So, alright, well, I'll keep you guys posted on how this southern approach goes. See if I can get through here or not, and see if I can pick up all the cities that I need, or maybe even, once I get down to Kharkov and Kursk here, maybe I'll just swing north and head for Moscow. Who knows? Then again, I think that was one of the mistakes the Germans made, was diluting their Schwerpunkt. They should have kept it one area. They should have kept the focus someplace, in the end, rather than, sending off Panzergruppe 3 to help out with Leningrad, and then of course sending Guderian's Panzergruppe 2 down to help out with Kiev and stuff. Once Guderian was down there, along with Kleist, they're both basically in this area roughly. So why not just go this way? Why send him all the way back to Moscow? Other than obviously Guderian and others thought, hey, if we get Moscow, we're going to win this thing. So anyway, that may be something I may try too. I may go ahead and try something like that, and see if there's even a way that I can get things set up the way they were at that point. That might take a little research to do, but we'll see. Okay, anyway, so there's where I'm at with Barbarossa, and we'll see how it goes. So this is Tim Korchnoi from Bare Bones Wargaming, saying thanks for watching, and I'll see you again sometime in the near future. Of course, with probably more Barbarossa stuff here as we get closer to June 22nd. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.